Now, I've said this a few times on this channel already that the more board games you design, the better designer you'll be. And I wanted to take that idea a step further in this video and talk about the different games you can play in order to be a better designer. So I've created a list of 21 board games every designer should play. These games showcase some of the most popular board game mechanics and themes. Being familiar with and playing a variety of games, like the ones in my list, will build a solid foundation for any designer. I've included a link to a PDF of the list if you want to have a checklist, you want to keep track of the games that you play. So this video is for new designers who haven't maybe played a ton of different kinds of games, or maybe haven't played a lot of the modern board games out there. But it's also for more established board game designers. Sometimes designers will stick to games that they know and that they like, and even if they're established, might not realize they might have some blind spots of different kinds of games that they haven't played before. It's always good to continue to play different kinds of games and see what's out there, and not just stick to one genre or one type of mechanic. So if you are a more established designer or board gamer and you've already played quite a few of the games on my list, I would suggest you head over to the mechanics list on Board Game Geek that lists all the different types of mechanics you can find in board games. Find a mechanic in that list that you haven't played before, click on it, learn about it, and then see the different games that use that mechanic, and then play that so that you can see what that's all about. So it's always good to play games outside your comfort zone, even if you're a more established designer. Of course, this is my list, this is my opinion, so if you have any suggestions for games that you think every board game designer should play, be sure to add them in the comments below. All right, let's get right into it. The first game on the list is Just One. This is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, party game. And it actually won the Spiel des Jahres, which is the board game of the year in 2019 for family style games. So if you haven't played it before, the idea is there's one guesser and everyone else is trying to get that guesser to guess a word. And everyone writes down a clue for that word, and all the clue givers show each other the clue that they wrote down. And if anyone wrote the same thing, they can't show that to the guesser. So it's such an interesting thing where you maybe don't want to write down something too obvious, but then if everyone writes down something very obscure, the guesser might not guess it. So then all the valid clues are shown to the guesser, they get one guess. It's a very, very simple idea, and it really illustrates how good a game can be just based on one simple mechanic. A lot of board game designers might not enjoy party games, playing them and designing them, but this is a great game to show how a very simple idea can be very clever. Moving on to Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. So this is a social deduction game. This is where players have different hidden roles and you don't know who's who, and you're trying to figure out who's who and also solve the murder. And I personally don't love a ton of social deduction games. I find them a bit stressful because there's bluffing and I'm terrible at lying. Stresses me out. But in this game, you're not necessarily interrogating other players and asking them questions, trying to figure out who's bluffing and who's lying with their answers. You're looking at pieces of evidence and you're talking as a group like, what do you think this was the weapon or that? And you're getting clues from another player as far as trying to solve the murder. So for me, this is a great way to do social deduction because a lot of people, feeling like you're being interrogated and you have to lie can stress a lot of people out. But it's definitely good to try out a social deduction game to see what they're all about. And the next game is Clue, an escape and solve mystery. So I chose this game, but there are a ton of escape games out there. This is probably one of my more favorite ones. So if you don't know, escape games are the same idea as escape rooms, where you're working together to solve puzzles and figure out some sort of mystery before a time limit, usually an hour. So I bring up escape games because they are one of the best innovations as far as modern board games go. They're very different from traditional board games. So you're working together against the clock, you're solving puzzles and riddles together, and a lot of the times the games will use the components of the box as part of the game. You might have to look at the top of the box in a certain way to see a secret message, or maybe there's a clue written in the barcode, different things like that. So really thinking outside of the box, I think that's really what escape games have done. And as a designer, I always want to be thinking innovatively and thinking about what could I do that's different and new, like escape games are. And number 4 is Sushi Go. So this is a very cute card drafting game, and there's also set collection. So you learn about card drafting and set collection in this game. So card drafting, and it's closed card drafting, so that means everyone will have a hand of cards. will pick one, pass the rest to the left or the right, and then get a new set of cards from their neighbor. Again, pick one, pass, until there aren't any cards left in anyone's hand. So closed drafting is the cool mechanic to know of, and then also there's set collections, so depending on what cards you've collected, you get a certain amount of points depending on how many you got that are the same, or that go together. It's a very simple, very cute game, but two really important mechanics to know about. And the next game is Azul. So like in Sushi Go, we had closed drafting, Azul has open drafting, and Sushi Go was cards, Azul is tiles. So it's an open tile drafting game where you have a bunch of tiles in the middle of the table, and depending on what you choose, whatever you don't choose will be available to the other players in the middle of the play area. So you need to think about what I want, but you also want to think about what you're leaving for other players to have available for them. And number 6 on the list is a classic, it's Yahtzee. So this is the quintessential roll and write game. You roll the dice, you can re-roll up to 2 times, and then you decide what you're going to do with your die results. This is good to know what roll and writes are, but also the Yahtzee roll. So like I mentioned, rolling and then re-rolling up to 2 times. Other games use the Yahtzee roll, so it's good to know about that. And number 7 is Patchwork. So this is an exclusively 2-player game, and it's about trying to create a quilt on your player mat without any missing gaps in it. So it's kind of like Tetris a little bit. But one of the coolest things of this game to see is that there's a very interesting way that turns are decided. So normally I go, then you go, then I go, then you go. But in this game, if your opponent is quite a bit further ahead on the track, you can go as many times until you are ahead of them. Once you're ahead of them on the track, then they can go as many times until they're ahead of you, and you keep going like that. So it's a very interesting, different way of looking at turn order, and that is called time track turn order. Coming in at number 8 is Forbidden Desert. So if you're not familiar, this is a cooperative game. So you're playing with each other against the game instead of against each other. So you're basically trying to all escape a desert before you're buried under sand or you die of thirst. It's by the same designer who made Pandemic and other cooperative games, Matt Leacock. Number 9 is Splendor. So Splendor is a great introduction to engine building. And engine building is a mechanic that's hard to explain. It's something that you really need to play to experience. The idea is everyone starts with basically nothing, but then as you accumulate resources or powers, you can then buy more things, do more things. By the end of the game, you're doing a bunch of cool stuff. And this is a very simple game. You're collecting different jewels to earn points, and whoever earns 15 points first wins. But once you've earned cards with jewels on them, you'll have those for the rest of the game. You don't have to continue to replenish them. So once you have a good stock of different jewel cards, you can do a lot more things a lot quicker. And number 10 is Celestia. Celestia is a really fun push your luck style game where you're traveling in an aircraft going island to island collecting treasure. But you have to decide if you want to get off at this island and collect treasure here, or stay on the aircraft and potentially get more points moving forward. But you also risk not getting any points at all. So the way you decide if you're going to stay or leave is if you think the captain of the ship will be able to play the cards needed to move forward. So the captain will probably want you to get off so that only they get the points. So they might pretend like they don't have the cards to fulfill the requirement. And if it's just you left in the aircraft, you can decide if you want to keep pushing your luck going further and further to get the higher value treasure further down the line. But then of course there's the risk that you get nothing. It's the closest to gambling that a lot of board games can get. But this one is probably my favorite push your luck game. And the next game is Root. Root is probably the most popular asymmetrical game where each player interacts with the game in a different way. Each player has a different set of rules and usually a different win condition. So it's a very different style of game than a traditional board game. The idea that I'm playing almost a different game than you are, but we are playing the same game, it's really interesting. Now with these styles of games, you want to make sure there is still a lot of player interaction and it doesn't feel like I'm playing a completely separate game from you, even though I have different rules. And number 12 is Jaws. So this is based on the movie Jaws, where one player is the shark and the rest of the players are the crew on a ship. And just like the movie, it gives sharks a bad rap. The shark is just running around, eating swimmers, attacking ships, when in reality, most sharks are just chilling, living their lives. But anyway, so the player who's playing the shark is secretly moving to different locations, so you don't know where they're going and the crew members are trying to figure out where the shark is. So the shark wins if they destroy the ship or kill all the crew members, I believe, and the crew members win if they kill the shark. But anyway, it's a good example of hidden movement and trying to figure out based on, you know, they're gonna pop up and do different things like, oh, maybe they're over here now, oh, maybe they're over there. You don't know exactly where they are, but you're getting little clues as to where they might be and trying to anticipate where they might move next. Number 13 is Catan. Now this is the game that a lot of people attribute as the catalyst for the renaissance of board games that we're in right now, the resurgence in popularity of board games. And this is what's called a Euro game. So there's a lot more focus on strategy over luck and managing resources over attacking other players. Number 14 is Magic the Gathering. This is the original collectible card game, or CCG. So in this style of game, players are building up libraries of cards, and then they're going to create a deck from their personal collection of cards before they face off against their opponent. Now, full disclosure, I still have not played Magic, but it is on my list. I want to try it out for myself and see what it's like. And so Magic the Gathering was designed by Richard Garfield, and that's actually the designer for the next game, which is King of Tokyo. Now this game does a really good job of two fairly challenging mechanics to incorporate in a way that still makes the game fun for players. And that's take that and player elimination. So in this game, you are fighting to be the last monster standing or the strongest monster if you reach a certain number of victory points. This game uses the Yahtzee roll, so you're rolling your dice and deciding what you're going to do with it. Player elimination is not terrible in this game because it is a very fast game, so you're not sitting out for hours like Monopoly or other elimination games. You just have to wait a little while, then you can get back in for the next game. And then take that isn't the central element of the game, it's just a part of the game, so that makes it tolerable. And number 16 is Lords of Waterdeep. This is one of my favorite worker placement games. So that means games where you have several player pieces and you're gonna decide which action space you're going to place one of your pieces each turn. But the thing is, if another player went there first, they will most likely block you. Usually it's just one player per action space. So that means you can't go to that action space for this round. So you have to decide where's the most important place I want to go first before anyone else gets there so I can get it for sure. This is probably my favorite worker placement game because I enjoy the sort of fantasy theme to it. It is set in the Dungeons and Dragons world, and there are lots of different actions you can take, and then more actions come up as more buildings are built on the game board. And number 17 is also a fantasy themed game. It's Tyrants of the Underdark. So Tyrants of the Underdark incorporates two central mechanics: deck building and area control. So deck building is the idea that you start with a fairly small number of cards, and then you're going to buy and add more cards to your deck. You're going to draw a hand from your deck, play a card, and then it is in your discard pile. You're going to go through your entire deck, adding more cards as you buy them. Once you've gone through all of your cards, you will then shuffle your deck and then draw cards again. So you continue replenishing your deck and playing with those cards. And then the idea is you're going to get rid of the weaker cards and add in stronger cards so you can do better things from the cards that you draw from your deck. And in Tyrants of the Underdark, you will then be doing things on a board, trying to have the majority of your players add locations, so then you control that location, which will earn you victory points. I really enjoyed it because it was a really cool combination of two core mechanics in the game that worked really well. And number 18 is Dungeons and Dragons. So this is the original role-playing game, or RPG, where players go on epic quests using a lot of their imagination and storytelling under the guidance of a dungeon master. So I tried this game out for the first time during COVID. I had never played it before, but I wanted to try it out to see what it was about. Me and my friends had never played it before, so none of us knew what we were doing, and I decided to be the dungeon master. It was really, really cool, but it's a lot to learn and a lot to understand, a lot of rules. But the rules are really supposed to be there as a guideline. You can really make up whatever you want. But as far as spells go and things like that, there is a lot to know as the dungeon masters. So we ended up not continuing with the game, but I definitely want to play it again with experienced dungeon masters who know all the different rules and nuances, and I can just enjoy being a player and using my imagination to build up a character and different stories and deciding what I'm going to do do when I encounter different things and working with the other players. So it's definitely its own whole world that I've just dipped my toe into, but I'm excited to learn more about it and to try it out more and to sort of expand my understanding of board games, including role-playing games. Number 19 is Istanbul. So this is a pick up and deliver game where you are dropping off your assistants in a busy marketplace in Istanbul, and you're dropping them off at different places to do different actions, but then you have to go back and pick them up to continue to do more actions. But as far as an introduction to pick up and deliver games, Istanbul would be a great one. Number 20 is Charterstone. So this is a legacy game. You may have heard of Pandemic Legacy, but this is a different legacy game that I really enjoyed. Usually legacy games are around 12 games, so that's called a campaign. And as you're playing, different things will be unlocked, so different cards will be revealed or different items will be revealed. The board will be modified and changed, like stickers will be added to the board or areas of the board will be revealed for the rest of the game. And in Charterstone, I really enjoy the idea of earning enough points to open a crate. Oh, sorry, I think it's influence. You have enough influence, you can open up a crate, and that means finding different cards and unlocking different cards to add to the game moving forward. So legacy games are another great example of innovation. They're very different from standard games. You're actually modifying and changing the board, and it will be different the next time you play. And I really love the idea of unlocking and revealing different things as you continue to explore the world. And number 21 is Colt Express. So this is a Western themed programming game. And what that means is everyone will decide what they're going to do, and they'll set their cards in that order. And then everyone's actions are resolved at the same time. So the idea is you're all on a train, and it's actually a 3D train on the table, which is cool. And you're running across and you're stealing from each other and you're trying to get as much gold as possible. But the programming mechanic is interesting, and this is a fun game to learn about how that works. All right, so that is my list of 21 board games every designer should play. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you print off the checklist and how many you get through, if there are any on this list you had never heard before, and of course, if there are additional games that you think designers should know about and should definitely play, be sure to add those in the comments. Now, all this talk about board games, I'm on my way. I'm actually running late to go to a board game cafe right now, so I gotta run, but make sure you follow me on social media at Pam Walls Game Design. But be sure to like and subscribe the video if you enjoyed this video or if it was helpful for you. And of course, I will see you in the next video.